I never thought I would betray everything I believed in, but one afternoon in a classroom changed my entire world. My name is Amira, and I am a 32-year-old mother who has always lived by faith and tradition. My hijab is not just fabric around my head, it represents my values, my commitment to my family, and my devotion to Allah. But sometimes, even the most faithful hearts can stumble. My marriage to has been steady for 8 years. He is a good man, a provider, but somewhere along the way we became strangers sharing the same house. He works late every night at his accounting firm, and when he comes home, he barely looks up from his phone. Our conversations revolve around bills, schedules, and our 7-year-old son Yusuf. The spark we once had has dimmed to almost nothing. That Tuesday afternoon, I walked into Yusuf's classroom for our scheduled parent-teacher conference. I had met Mr. David Coleman briefly during the school orientation, but this was our first real conversation. He was young, maybe 28, with kind brown eyes and an easy smile that made me feel seen in a way I had forgotten was possible. Khalil, please have a seat, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Yusuf is such a bright boy. His creativity in writing assignments really stands out. As he spoke about my son's progress, I found myself studying his face. There was genuine warmth in his voice when he talked about the children. His sleeves were rolled up, showing strong forearms, and when he leaned forward to show me Yusuf's artwork, I caught a hint of his cologne, something clean and masculine that made my heart skip. He wrote this story about a brave knight, David continued, sliding a paper toward me. Our fingers brushed as I took it, and I felt electricity shoot through my hand. I pulled back quickly, hoping he had not noticed my reaction. That is wonderful, I managed to say, my voice slightly shaky. He loves adventure stories, David smiled. He gets that imagination from somewhere. Do you read to him often? Every night before bed, I replied. It is our special time together. That explains so much, he said, his eyes meeting mine directly. You are clearly a devoted mother. The way he said devoted made something flutter in my chest. When was the last time had complimented my parenting? When was the last time he had really looked at me the way David was looking at me now? Is everything all right at home? David asked gently. Yusuf mentioned that his father works very late. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Was my loneliness so obvious that even my son had noticed? Is very dedicated to his work, I said carefully, sometimes too dedicated. David nodded with understanding. It must be difficult managing everything on your own so much at the time. Those simple words hit me like a revelation. Someone understood, someone saw how hard I was trying, how lonely I felt. My eyes began to well up and I looked down at my hands to compose myself. I am sorry, I whispered. I do not usually get emotional like this. There is nothing to apologize for, David said softly. Being a parent is hard work, especially when you feel like you are doing it alone. I looked up and found him watching me with such genuine concern that my breath caught. This was dangerous territory. I could feel something awakening inside me that had been dormant for years. I should go, I said, standing quickly. Thank you for taking such good care of Yusuf. Of course, David replied, also standing. Actually, if you ever need to discuss Yusuf's progress further, I usually stay after school until 5:30. My door is always open. As I walked to my car, my hands were trembling. What was happening to me? David was just being kind, just doing his job. But the way he had looked at me, the way he had listened, it felt like something more. That night, as I performed my evening prayers, I tried to push thoughts of David from my mind. But as I whispered my supplications, I could not shake the memory of his warm brown eyes and the way his voice had made me feel understood for the first time in years. 3 days later, I found myself volunteering to help with the school book fair, something I had never done before. I told myself it was for Yusuf's benefit, but deep down I knew the truth. I wanted to see David again. Khalil, what a pleasant surprise, David said when he saw me arranging books in the library. I did not know you were volunteering today. I thought it would be good to be more involved. I replied, not meeting his eyes. I was wearing my favorite hijab, a deep blue one that had once said brought out my eyes. I wondered if David noticed. Well, I am glad you are here, he said. I could use help organizing the poetry section. We worked side by side for the next hour, our conversation flowing naturally from books to travel to our childhood dreams. David had studied literature in college and had originally wanted to be a writer before choosing teaching. I found myself sharing things I had not talked about in years: my love of poetry, my desire to maybe return to university someday. You should definitely pursue that, David encouraged. It is never too late to follow your dreams. Oma thinks it is a waste of time, I said without thinking, then immediately regretted sharing something so personal. David stopped arranging books and looked at me seriously. Your dreams are never a waste of time, Amira. May I call you Amira? Hearing my first name from his lips sent a shiver through me. Yes, of course. You seem like someone with so much to offer the world, he continued. I hope you know that. Our eyes met and held for a moment too long. I felt my cheeks burning and looked away, but not before I saw something in his expression that made my pulse race. I should check on the cash register, I said quickly, needing distance before I did something foolish. But David caught my wrist gently as I turned to leave. Amira, wait. I hope I have not overstepped. I just think you are remarkable, and I hate to see someone so bright dimming their own light. His hand on my wrist felt like fire. I stared down at where he touched me, knowing I should pull away but finding myself frozen. You have not overstepped, I whispered. When I finally looked up, the intensity in his eyes nearly took my breath away. We were alone in the poetry section, hidden behind tall bookshelves, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. I could smell his cologne again, could see the way his chest rose and fell with his breathing. David, I breathed, not even sure what I was going to say. I know, he said quietly, his thumb brushing across my pulse point. I feel it too. The sound of children's voices in the hallway broke the spell. We jumped apart like we had been burned. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. I need to go, I said, my voice barely audible. Of course, David replied, but his eyes never left mine. But Amira, if you ever need someone to talk to, someone who understands, I am here. I practically ran from the library, my mind reeling. What was I doing? I was a married woman, a mother, a faithful Muslim. This was exactly the kind of situation I had always prided myself on avoiding. But even as I drove home, I could not stop thinking about the way David had said my name, the way his touch had awakened something inside me that I thought was dead. That evening, as I helped Yusuf with his homework, he looked up at me with his innocent eyes. Mama, Mr. Coleman asked about you today. He said you were very helpful at the book fair. My stomach dropped. What did he say exactly? He just asked if you liked books as much as I do. I told him you read to me every night and that you know lots of poems by heart. That is nice, Habibti, I said, ruffling his hair while my mind raced. David was asking about me. This was becoming more complicated than I had ever imagined. Late that night, after Oma had fallen asleep beside me without so much as a good night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I kept replaying every moment with David, every word, every look. I knew I was walking toward the edge of a cliff, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. 2 weeks passed before I found an excuse to see David again. Yusuf had been struggling with a math assignment, and I convinced myself that speaking to his teacher was the responsible thing to do. But as I walked through the empty school hallways at 4:30 in the afternoon, I knew I was lying to myself. Amira, David said when I appeared in his classroom doorway. The way his face lit up when he saw me made my heart flutter. This is a wonderful surprise. I hope I am not interrupting, I said, stepping inside. I wanted to discuss Yusuf's mathematics progress. Of course, please sit down. He gestured to the chair beside his desk instead of across from it, though I have to say Yusuf has been doing much better lately. He seems happier, more focused, really. I asked, settling into the chair. I was acutely aware of how close we were sitting, how the late afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows made his eyes look golden. Yes, and I think I know why, David said, turning his chair to face me fully. He talks about you constantly, the stories you read together, the way you help him with his projects. He clearly adores you. He is everything to me, I said softly. It shows, David replied. You are an amazing mother, Amira. I hope you know that. There it was again, that feeling of being truly seen. Oma does not think so, I said before I could stop myself. He thinks I spoil Yusuf too much. David's expression darkened slightly. How could anyone think that loving your child deeply is spoiling them? He says I am too emotional, too soft, that I need to be more practical. There is nothing wrong with having a big heart. David said, leaning closer, the world needs more people who love as deeply as you do. I felt tears threatening. When was the last time someone had validated my feelings instead of dismissing them? You barely know me, I whispered. I know enough, he said, his voice low and intense. I know you light up when you talk about poetry. I know you put everyone else's needs before your own. I know you have this incredible warmth that you hide behind careful politeness because someone made you feel like it was too much. His words hit me like a physical blow. How could he see me so clearly when my own husband seemed blind to who I really was? David, we cannot, I started, but he reached out and gently touched my hand. I know we cannot, he said. But that does not make this feeling any less real. We sat there in the golden afternoon light, his hand covering mine, both of us breathing hard like we had just run a marathon. I knew I should leave. I knew this was wrong on every level that mattered to me, but I also knew that I had never felt more alive than I did in that moment. I think about you, I admitted in a whisper. I should not, but I do, every day, he confessed. I look for you in the hallways. I hope Yusuf will need extra help just so I have an excuse to call you. This is madness, I said, but I made no move to pull my hand away. Maybe David agreed, but it is the first time in months that I have felt anything real. Suddenly, we heard footsteps in the hallway. We sprang apart, and I quickly adjusted my hijab with shaking hands. The janitor passed by the open door, nodding politely. I have to go, I said, gathering my purse with trembling fingers. Amira, wait, David called softly. My phone number is on the class contact sheet. If you ever need anything at all, please call me. I nodded without looking back and hurried from the classroom. But I knew I was already lost. For 3 agonizing days, I fought with myself. I prayed extra prayers, I read Quran, I tried to focus on being a better wife to But David's phone number seemed to burn like fire in my purse. Every time I looked at Yusuf, I thought of his teacher. Every time ignored me at dinner, I thought of David's warm eyes and gentle words. On Friday afternoon, while Yusuf was at his grandmother's house and was working late again, I finally broke. My hands shook as I dialed David's number. Hello, his voice made my heart race even through the phone. David, it is Amira, I said quietly. Amira, he breathed, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I was hoping you would call. I should not be calling you, I said. This is wrong, I know, he said gently. But I am glad you did anyway. Are you okay? You sound upset, and then everything poured out of me. I told him about my loneliness, about feeling invisible in my own home, about the way treated me more like a housekeeper than a wife. David listened without judgment, offering comfort and understanding that I had been starving for. You deserve so much more than that, he said when I finished. You deserve to be cherished. I made vows, I whispered, before God, before my family. And you have honored those vows, David replied. But what about your vows to yourself, to live fully, to be happy? It is not that simple for someone like me, I said. My faith, my community, if anyone knew we were even talking like this. Then maybe we should not just talk, David said quietly. The silence stretched between us, heavy with possibility and danger. I cannot, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I am not asking you to do anything you do not want to do, David said, but I am here, Amira. If you need someone who sees you, who values you, I am here. Where? The word escaped before I could stop it. Tomorrow is Saturday. The school will be empty. I was planning to work in my classroom, organizing supplies for next week. If you wanted to come by just to talk, my pulse thundered in my ears. What time? 2 o'clock. The side door near the playground will be unlocked. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at my wedding ring. Everything I had been taught told me this was wrong, but my heart was screaming that it felt more right than anything had in years. That night, Oma came home at nearly midnight, ate the dinner I had kept warm for him without a word of thanks, and fell asleep on the couch watching television. I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling, knowing that tomorrow I would cross a line I could never uncross. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was truly alive. Saturday afternoon arrived like Judgment Day. I dropped Yusuf off at my mother's house, telling her I needed to run errands. The lie tasted bitter in my mouth, but I drove to the school anyway. David was waiting for me in his classroom, and the moment I saw him, all my reservations crumbled. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. He showed me the poems his students had written, and I shared some of my own verses that I had written in Arabic years ago. When he asked me to translate them, his eyes never left my face. "You are incredible," he said when I finished reciting. "Your husband is a fool not to see what he has." That was when everything changed. When he reached up to touch my cheek, I did not pull away. When he whispered my name like a prayer, I let him. And when he kissed me, soft and reverent, I kissed him back with 8 years of longing. We did not go further than kissing, but it felt like I had shattered into a million pieces and been rebuilt as someone completely different. Afterward, we held each other in the empty classroom, both knowing we had crossed into territory we could never return from. "What happens now?" I whispered against his shoulder. "I do not know," he admitted, "but I cannot regret this, neither could I, and that terrified me more than anything." For 2 weeks, we met in secret, always at school, always careful, always consumed with guilt and longing in equal measure. David respected my boundaries, never pushing for more than I was ready to give, but every stolen moment felt like both salvation and damnation. The end came suddenly and brutally. Oma surprised me by coming home early one Tuesday, just as I was returning from another secret meeting with David. My phone buzzed with a text message right as Oma kissed my cheek. "Hello." "What was that?" Oma asked casually. "Just a reminder about Yusuf's field trip permission slip," I lied. But my voice sounded strange even to me. Oma looked at me more closely. "You seem different lately, happier. Have you been taking those vitamins I bought you?" "Something like that," I said, but he was already reaching for my phone. "Let me see the message. Maybe I need to sign something too." My blood turned to ice. David's text was right there on the screen. "Thank you for today. You make everything brighter. See you Thursday." Amar's face went through a series of emotions: confusion, realization, rage. "Who is David?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. I could not speak, could not breathe, could not do anything but watch my world collapse. "Who is David?" Oma roared, and I flinched. "Yusuf's teacher," I whispered. Amar's eyes went dark with understanding. "No," he said, "tell me you did not." The silence was my confession. What followed was the worst night of my life. Amar's anger, my mother's disappointment when he called her, the horrible conversation with Yusuf trying to explain why Daddy was so upset. I had not just betrayed my husband, I had betrayed my son, my family, my faith, everything I claimed to hold sacred. David texted me dozens of times that week, but I could not respond. Oma had taken my phone, and honestly, what was there to say? We both knew it was over before it really began. 2 months later, David left the school for a position in another state. I never saw him again. Oma and I are in counseling now, trying to rebuild what I destroyed. Some days are better than others. Yusuf still does not fully understand what happened, but I see the confusion in his eyes when the tension between his parents fills the room. I still wear my hijab every day, still pray 5 times daily, still try to be the wife and mother I promised to be. But I carry the weight of my choices like stones in my chest. I learned that faith and desire can coexist in the human heart, creating a war that no one else can see. I do not regret feeling alive again, but I will forever regret the cost. Some hungers are meant to remain unfed, no matter how deeply they ache. The lesson came too late, but perhaps sharing my story can help another woman recognize the cliff before she falls over the edge.